The city of Seoul glittered under a million neon lights, but in Ji-woon's mansion, shadows stretched longer than the lamps. His empire, built on blood and fear, had always been unshakable. Yet now, there was a shift, a whisper in the air that his men carried in their eyes but dared not say aloud. The boss has gone soft. Started small. His refusal to attend late-night club meetings. His orders to keep violence away from a certain quiet neighborhood. And most shocking of all, the sight of the Ice King himself, Han Ji-woon, walking into a humble church every Sunday morning, standing quietly at the back while a black girl with a voice like honey sang hymns. Eliana. She had no idea that she was causing tremors in the underworld. To her, Ji-woon was simply a juicy, the grumpy man who folded his arms whenever she teased him, the one she liked offering candies to instead of whiskey. But to his men, she was a storm that could wash away everything they had built. That evening, Ji-woon sat in his study, staring at a glass of untouched whiskey. His hands drummed against the polished oak desk. He thought about Eliana's laughter earlier that day, how she'd giggled when he had tried, awkwardly, to bow his head in prayer. "Your fingers are too stiff," she'd said, playfully pulling his hands together. "Prayer isn't a fight, a juicy. Relax." And somehow, in her presence, he had. The door creaked open. Soo-min, his right-hand man, entered quietly. His eyes scanned the untouched drink on the desk, his lips twitching into something between disbelief and disgust. "You're changing," Soo-min said bluntly. Ji-woon didn't look up. "Speak carefully." Soo-min stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "The men are whispering. They say you've forgotten who you are. They say you'd rather sit in a church than in a club. That you'd rather chase after a girl who knows nothing about our world than lead us." Finally, Ji-woon's eyes lifted, cold and sharp. "Is that what you say, too?" There was silence. Then Soo-min smiled faintly, but it was not warm. "I only say what I see, and what I see is weakness." The words cut deeper than any blade. For years, Soo-min had been his shadow, his brother in arms. They had buried friends together, conquered rivals side by side. But now, Ji-woon could feel the distance growing. The next day, Eliana hummed as she arranged him books in the church. She had tied her hair into a bun, a few curls escaping to frame her glowing face. Ji-woon stood by the doorway, watching her with an expression no one else had ever seen on his face. Softness. She noticed him and grinned. "Ah, juicy, you came early today. I wanted to see you," he admitted, his voice low. Eliana tilted her head, pretending to be shocked. "What? The great Han Ji-woon, who can't even smile properly, wanted to see me?" She clasped her chest dramatically. "The world must be ending." He smirked despite himself. "You talk too much. And you brood too much," she shot back, stepping closer. Then, before he could stop her, she reached for his hands. "Let's practice again. Show me how you pray." His large, scarred hands trembled slightly in hers. For a moment, the Mafia boss, the man feared across Seoul, looked like a lost boy. "I don't know how," he muttered. "That's okay." Her eyes softened. "You don't need perfect words. Just close your eyes and tell God what's in your heart." Ji-woon swallowed hard. He closed his eyes. For the first time in years, his lips moved without a command, without anger. Only one word came out. "Eliana." Her breath caught. She blinked at him, her chest tightening. But before she could respond, the heavy sound of boots echoed outside the church. Ji-woon's eyes snapped open. His men. He recognized the rhythm of their steps immediately. They were watching him, testing him, whispering their doubts into the air. He released her hands abruptly. "I have to go." "Ah, juicy," she started, but he was already moving, his face once again hardened like stone. That night, Soo-min sat in a dimly lit bar across from a man whose very presence made the air heavy. Park Dae-hyun, the rival boss. "You're saying Ji-woon is distracted?" Dae-hyun asked, swirling his glass of soju. "Not distracted," Soo-min replied, his voice dripping with bitterness. "He's weak. He's chasing after a foreign church girl. He lets her soften him. If you move now, you'll find cracks in his empire." Daehyun's lips curled into a dangerous smile. Perfect. Then we shall shatter him. Through her. Sumin hesitated, guilt flickering in his eyes, but he clenched his jaw. Better she be gone than watch Ji-woon throw away everything for her. Back in her little apartment, Eliana knelt by her bed, praying softly. God, I don't know why my heart beats so fast when I see him. He's dangerous, I know, but there's something broken in him, something lonely. Please, don't let me be a fool. If I'm meant to help him, give me strength. If not, take these feelings away. But even as she prayed, tears slipped down her cheeks. Deep down, she knew her heart was no longer hers. It belonged to the man everyone else feared, the man who had whispered her name like a prayer. And outside, in the shadows, danger moved closer. Sunday mornings were sacred to Eliana. She always woke up early, tying her curls into a loose bun, picking a simple floral dress, and humming hymns as she walked to church. The streets of Seoul still yawned in silence, but she loved those quiet walks. They reminded her of home, of the warm African mornings when her mother would drag her to church with sleepy eyes and restless feet. This Sunday, though, felt different. The sky was unusually gray, and the wind carried a heaviness she couldn't name. Still, she smiled when she saw him. Han Ji-woon was already waiting by the church gate. A black suit clung to his broad shoulders, his tattoos peeking slightly at his collar. He looked completely out of place, a wolf standing guard at a sheepfold, yet he bowed slightly when she approached. "You're early," she teased. His lips curved into the smallest smile. "I didn't want you walking alone." Her heart fluttered, though she rolled her eyes dramatically. "Juicy, you sound like a bodyguard." "Don't worry. God walks with me." Ji-woon's eyes darkened, as if the idea of trusting anyone but himself, even God, unsettled him. But he didn't argue. Instead, he followed her inside, as he had every Sunday for the past month. The church was alive with warmth. Children rushed to hug Eliana, elders smiled at her, and Eun-hye waved enthusiastically from the choir stand. Ji-woon stayed near the back pew, hands in his pockets, pretending not to notice how every head turned toward him. To the congregation, he was the quiet stranger in expensive suits, always watching Eliana with an intensity no one understood. Some whispered, some disapproved, but Eliana never cared. She led the congregation in a hymn, her voice soaring like honey-coated sunlight. "Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine." Ji-woon closed his eyes for a moment, the sound wrapping around him like chains and freedom at once. He had listened to gunfire, screams, and dying men for years, but her voice, it silenced every war inside him. The bell tolled for the sermon. Pastor Choi stood at the pulpit, his voice steady, preaching about forgiveness and redemption. Ji-woon barely listened. His gaze was locked on Eliana, who scribbled notes with the seriousness of a child in school. For a fleeting second, he let himself imagine a life without blood, without war. A life where mornings smelled like in books and fresh flowers, where Eliana's laughter filled their home. But then it happened. The heavy doors of the church slammed open with a deafening crack. Masked men poured inside, guns glinting in the holy light. Gasps erupted. Mothers screamed, pulling their children close. Pastor Choi froze at the pulpit. Eun-hye's hymn book fell to the floor with a thud. Ji-woon was on his feet instantly, eyes blazing with recognition. Park Daehyun's men. "Where is Han Ji-woon?" One of them barked in Korean, waving his weapon. The church erupted in chaos. People dove under pews, prayers turning into cries of terror. Eliana froze, clutching her Bible to her chest, her heart pounding wildly. She turned and saw Ji-woon, the man everyone feared, standing tall, unflinching. "I'm here," Ji-woon growled, stepping forward. The men moved toward him, but Ji-woon was faster. With brutal precision, he disarmed the first gunman, twisting his wrist until the crack of bone echoed through the sanctuary. The second man swung a knife. Ji-woon slammed him against a pew, splinters flying. Screams rose. Eliana quickly ushered children behind the choir stand, shielding them with her body. She wanted to close her eyes, but she couldn't. She had never seen violence this close. Never seen Ji-woon fight with such fury. He was a storm unleashed. Every punch, every strike carried years of bloodshed. Yet there was something desperate in his movements. He wasn't just fighting to survive. He was fighting to protect her. Within minutes, the masked men retreated, dragging their injured comrades with them. The church was left in shambles. Hymn books scattered, pews broken, the sacred silence shattered by violence. Pastor Choi descended from the pulpit, his face pale with shock. His eyes locked on Ji-woon, who stood in the center of the chaos, his chest heaving, blood splattered across his white shirt. "This is holy ground," Pastor Choi said firmly, voice trembling with both fear and anger. "And you have brought war into it." Ji-woon's jaw clenched. He didn't respond. Eliana stepped forward, her hands shaking as she reached for his arm. "Juicy, are you hurt?" Her voice was soft, trembling, but it pierced deeper than any bullet. Ji-woon turned to her, his cold eyes softening. "I'm fine," but he wasn't. Inside, he was breaking. After the congregation dispersed in fear, Pastor Choi pulled Eliana aside. His expression was stern, his tone unyielding. "Eliana, you must stay away from that man." She flinched. "Pastor." "No," his voice rose slightly. "You saw what happened today. That violence follows him everywhere. If you keep him close, you will be swallowed in it too." Tears pricked Eliana's eyes, but she shook her head stubbornly. "He protected us. If he wasn't here, people would have died." Pastor Choi sighed heavily, sorrow in his gaze. "Child, the devil does not always come with horns. Sometimes he comes as a wounded man. Be careful your compassion doesn't become your undoing." Eliana's throat tightened. She looked across the church, where Ji-woon stood alone, brushing blood from his knuckles. He looked so dangerous, yet so lonely. Her heart whispered what her mind feared. "I can't leave him." That night, Ji-woon drove Eliana home in silence. The city lights blurred past, but he could only hear her quiet breathing beside him. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and rough. "I'll protect you, always." She turned, eyes glistening. "But who protects you, Juicy?" He didn't answer. His hands tightened on the wheel, and in his silence, she heard the weight of a man who carried the world alone. In another part of the city, Park Dae-hyun sat in his office, laughing darkly. "So the Ice King hides in churches now? Perfect. Then we'll crush him there. Let's see how long his little saint can save him." And somewhere in the shadows, Sumin listened, his heart heavy with betrayal. The mansion was unusually quiet that night. Normally, Ji-woon's home buzzed with activity. Men discussing shipments, guards moving in and out, Sumin bringing in reports. But tonight, after the chaos at the church, silence wrapped around every corner. Ji-woon sat in his study, staring at his bruised knuckles. He had cleaned the blood, but the sting lingered. What haunted him wasn't the fight. He had fought hundreds of battles. What haunted him was the look in Eliana's eyes as she clutched children behind the choir stand. The mixture of fear and faith. He had protected her, but he had also stained her holy ground. "Juicy," her voice whispered in his memory, soft and trembling. "Are you hurt?" The man who once thought himself unbreakable felt something shift inside. The door creaked open, breaking his thoughts. Sumin walked in without knocking, his expression unreadable. "You should rest," Ji-woon said, pouring himself water instead of whiskey. "We had a long day." But Sumin didn't move. He leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "What are you doing to yourself, Hyung?" Ji-woon's brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I mean this." Sumin's voice rose slightly. "The church, the girl, the way you're letting your guard down. Today could have been worse. You almost got her killed. You almost got all of us killed." Ji-woon's jaw tightened. "Don't speak of her." Sumin's eyes darkened. "Why not? She's the reason you're distracted. The reason men whisper that the Ice King has turned into a lapdog." Ji-woon slammed his glass on the desk, water spilling. "Watch your mouth." For a moment, the room vibrated with tension. These two men had fought side by side for a decade. Sumin had been more than a soldier. He had been Ji-woon's brother. Yet now, something sharp divided them. Finally, Sumin stepped closer, lowering his voice. You can't have both, Young. You can't be her savior and our boss. You have to choose. Jiwoon looked away, his throat heavy. You don't understand. No, Sumin snapped. You're the one who doesn't understand. Men like us don't get to dream about peace. We don't get to hold hands in churches. We live with blood, and we die with blood. That girl. She doesn't belong in our world. And if you're not careful, she'll destroy you. The words cut, but Jiwoon didn't respond, because deep down he feared Sumin was right. The next morning, Eliana walked into the church earlier than usual. She wanted to pray before choir practice, to clear the heaviness in her chest. But as she entered, she noticed someone waiting by the pews. Sumin. He wasn't dressed like a mafia soldier. No leather jacket, no intimidating stance. Just a plain black shirt and jeans. But his eyes were sharp, watching her every move. Hello? She said cautiously. He gave a stiff nod. You're Eliana. She smiled politely. Yes, and you are. Han Ji-woon's right hand, he said flatly. Her smile faltered. Something in his tone made her uneasy. Oh, nice to meet you. Sumin studied her, his gaze cold. Do you know what kind of man he is? Eliana frowned. I know enough. No, you don't. His voice was sharp. You think he's just a lonely man with a scarred heart. But Ji-woon is a monster. He has blood on his hands that will never wash off. And when the time comes, he won't save you. He'll save himself. Eliana's chest tightened, but she lifted her chin. You're wrong. He's more than that. I've seen it. Sumin's lips curled into a bitter smile. You're naive. That's why he likes you. Because you don't see the truth. Eliana's eyes glistened, but she didn't back down. Or maybe you don't see it. Maybe you've forgotten he's human. Not just a boss. For a moment, Sumin's expression flickered. Pain, jealousy, anger all at once. Then he turned sharply and left, leaving Eliana trembling in the empty church. That night, Eliana found Ji-woon waiting outside her apartment. He leaned against his car, the streetlight casting shadows over his face. You shouldn't come here so openly, she scolded softly. People will see. Let them, he said, his eyes locked on hers. Something in his voice made her chest ache. She stepped closer. What's wrong, a juicy? He hesitated. His walls almost rose again, but her gentle gaze disarmed him. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Sumin, he doesn't trust what we have. He thinks you'll ruin me. Eliana's heart squeezed. So that's why he came to me. She reached for his hand, her small fingers wrapping around his scarred knuckles. I'm not here to ruin you, she whispered. I just want you to know you're not alone. Ji-woon stared at her, emotions storming in his eyes. No one had ever said those words to him before. Not his family, not his men, not even Sumin. For the first time, he lowered his forehead to hers, closing his eyes. Eliana, if anything happens to you because of me, his voice broke. I won't survive it. Her heart pounded. She wanted to tell him she wasn't afraid, that she believed in him, but her throat tightened. Instead, she cupped his face, whispering, Then don't push me away. Let me stand with you. And in that quiet street, surrounded by shadows and secrets, Ji-woon kissed her forehead. A soft, broken promise that carried the weight of a man fighting for love in a world built on blood. But across the city, Sumin stood in Park Dae-hyun's office, fists clenched, heart heavy with betrayal. If you want to break him, Sumin muttered, his voice bitter, you don't aim for the king, you take his queen. Dae-hyun's lips curled into a cruel smile. Then Eliana will be mine to destroy. The sun had barely set when Eliana's laughter still lingered in Ji-woon's penthouse. She had been teasing him about how stiff his suit made him look when he prayed. Ji-woon had smiled softly, pretending to be annoyed, but in truth, he loved every second she spent making fun of him. For the first time in years, the Mafia boss known as the Ice King felt human. Alive, loved, but happiness has enemies. Eliana had decided to walk to the little corner bakery just 2 streets away. She wanted to surprise Ji-woon with fresh hot bread, the kind she said would make his stone heart melt like butter. She hummed softly, a church hymn her mother taught her back in Africa, her braids swinging gently in the evening air. She didn't notice the black van creeping behind her. The men moved fast. One moment Eliana was smiling at the smell of roasted chestnuts, and the next, a hand clamped over her mouth. Her hymn was cut off, swallowed into silence. She kicked, scratched, and tried to scream, but the van doors slammed shut, and within seconds, she was gone. The street was empty again. Ji-woon felt it immediately. He was on the phone with one of his men when his chest tightened. The breadbasket she promised to bring never came. Minutes stretched like hours. His hands began to tremble, not from fear, but from the bone-deep knowledge that his world was being ripped apart. When the call finally came, his blood turned to fire. "She's with us now." Park Dae-hyun's mocking voice echoed through the speaker. "Your little church doll. Let's see how long her prayers protect her when the lights go out." Ji-woon smashed the glass table in front of him with his bare hands. Blood dripped from his knuckles, but he didn't care. His roar shook the walls. "Eliana!" Eliana's wrists were tied with rough rope, her ankles bound. The warehouse smelled of oil and death. Park Dae-hyun circled her slowly, a snake savoring its prey. "So, this is the woman who melted the Ice King," he sneered. "I thought she'd be a femme fatale dripping in diamonds. But you look like you just stepped out of Sunday school." Eliana's heart pounded, but she lifted her chin. "Mock me all you want. My God still sees me, and Ji-woon will come for me." Dae-hyun laughed, clapping his hands. "So much faith. Let us see if faith keeps you breathing when my men get bored tonight." Eliana closed her eyes. Fear clawed at her, but she began to hum softly, the same hymn from earlier. Her voice trembled but grew stronger with every note. "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" The sound unsettled the hardened men guarding her. Even Dae-hyun paused for a heartbeat, annoyed by the calm in her spirit. But Eliana clung to that song like it was oxygen, wrapping herself in its peace. Back at the penthouse, Ji-woon was a storm. His men had never seen him like this, not even when his empire was under attack. He grabbed Soo-min by the collar, rage spilling from his eyes. "You let them take her. Find her. I swear, if she loses even a strand of hair." His voice cracked. The great Mafia boss, feared by the whole city, was on the verge of breaking. Soo-min, for the first time, saw how much Eliana meant to him. This wasn't about pride, power, or revenge. This was about love. A love so raw it stripped Ji-woon of his armor. "Hyung," Soo-min whispered, his own chest tightening. "We'll bring her back. I promise." Night fell like a shroud. Eliana sat tied to a metal chair, her lips bleeding where one of the men had struck her to silence him. But she smiled faintly through the pain. She whispered to herself, "Ji-woon will come. I know he will." And far across the city, Ji-woon loaded his gun, eyes burning with tears he didn't let fall. He muttered the only prayer he knew, the one Eliana had taught him just days ago. "God, let me reach her. Please." The Ice King was coming. And this time, he wasn't just fighting as a mafia boss. He was fighting as a man in love. The city slept, but Ji-woon's empire was wide awake. Every soldier, every gun, every whisper in the alleys moved with one purpose: bring Eliana back. The penthouse was no longer silent. Maps of the city lay spread across the table, red pins marking warehouses, docks, and underground tunnels. Ji-woon stood in the middle, shirt sleeves rolled up, veins bulging in his arms as if his rage had taken physical form. "Tonight," he growled, his voice sharp as broken glass, "we burn them all." His men exchanged nervous glances. The Ji-woon they knew was cold, calculating, and merciless. But this Ji-woon, he was on fire, desperate, dangerous. His fury made him unpredictable. Soo-min approached cautiously. "Hyung, if we storm them blindly, they'll expect it. Dae-hyun wants you reckless. He'll use Eliana to trap you." Ji-woon's fist slammed the table. "I don't care if it's a trap. She's out there, tied, bleeding, terrified. Every second I breathe without her is a sin." Silence fell. No one dared argue further. Meanwhile, In the warehouse, Eliana's body ached, but her spirit refused to break. She had prayed silently until her lips were dry. She replayed Ji-woon's clumsy attempts at praying in her mind, and it gave her strength. A guard leaned against the wall, watching her with irritation. "How can you sit there and smile? You're about to die." Eliana's voice was faint but steady. "Because love is coming for me. And when love comes, even death trembles." The guard looked unsettled and turned away, muttering. The night deepened. Black SUVs rolled out of Ji-woon's garage, engines growling like beasts unleashed. Guns gleamed under the moonlight. Inside the lead car, Ji-woon sat in silence, his eyes dark with fury. His men had never seen him pray before, but now his lips moved in whispers. "Hold her. Keep her breathing. I'm on my way." Sumin glanced at him, his chest heavy. He had betrayed Ji-woon once, but seeing this side of him, a man ready to die for a woman, cracked something in him. He gripped his gun tighter, silently vowing to protect Eliana at all costs. The convoy screeched to a halt outside the warehouse district. Shadows moved across rooftops. Daehyun's men were already waiting. Bullets tore through the air without warning. The night erupted into chaos. Glass shattered, metal screamed, and bodies fell. Ji-woon charged forward like a storm, his gun spitting fire. His men covered him, but nothing could stop his advance. Every shot he fired, every body he dropped, was for one name only, Eliana. "Hyung, wait!" Sumin shouted, but Ji-woon had already kicked the warehouse door open, stepping into the lion's den. Inside, Eliana's head jerked up at the sound of gunfire. Her heart skipped a beat. "He's here." Daehyun appeared from the shadows, clapping slowly, his lips curled in a cruel smile. "The Ice King himself. I almost thought you'd lost your teeth." Ji-woon's gun was aimed at his head instantly. "Where is she?" Daehyun laughed. "Behind you, tied up like a lamb. But if you shoot me, she dies. If you don't shoot me, she still dies." Ji-woon's jaw tightened. For the first time in years, his hands shook. His eyes darted past Daehyun, and there she was, Eliana. Blood on her lip, bruises on her arms, but her eyes were still shining like sunlight through stained glass. "Ji-woon," she whispered, her voice breaking. The sound nearly brought him to his knees. The standoff didn't last. One of Daehyun's men lunged, and Ji-woon unleashed hell. The warehouse exploded with violence. Bullets tore through crates, sparks lit up the dark, and screams filled the air. Ji-woon fought like a man possessed, cutting down anyone who dared touch the space between him and Eliana. Sumin burst through the side door, taking shots at Daehyun's men, covering Ji-woon's blind spots. "Go, Hyung!" he shouted, his voice raw. Ji-woon finally reached Eliana, ripping the ropes from her wrists. She collapsed into his arms, trembling, whispering, "I knew you'd come." For a heartbeat, time froze. The battle faded, and it was just them, blood and fire around, but love at the center. Then a gunshot rang. Eliana screamed as Ji-woon staggered, a bullet grazing his side. His grip tightened around her, refusing to let go. He turned, fury blazing in his eyes, and fired 3 shots straight into Daehyun's chest. The rival boss stumbled back, eyes wide, before collapsing into the flames. The war was over. Ji-woon fell to his knees, still holding Eliana. Blood soaked his shirt, but his hand cupped her face gently, trembling. "I told you, I'd never let you go." Tears streamed down Eliana's cheeks. "You're hurt, Ji-woon. Please don't leave me." He smiled faintly, pressing his forehead to hers. "I'll crawl through fire 1,000 times, if it means finding you at the end." Around them, the warehouse burned. Bodies lay scattered, shadows danced on walls, and the smell of smoke filled the air. But in the middle of it all, Ji-woon and Eliana held each other as if the world didn't exist. Love had survived fire and blood. The fire still burned in Ji-woon's eyes long after the warehouse had turned to ashes. His men carried out the wounded, while Sumin barked orders, his face smeared with blood and sweat. The night had been won, but at a cost. Inside Ji-woon's car, Eliana sat silently, her small hands trembling on her lap. Her wrists were raw from the ropes. The faint bruise on her cheek told the story of a slap she never deserved. Ji-woon sat beside her, his side wrapped hastily with bandages, though the blood kept seeping through. He reached out, his rough hand covering hers gently. "Eliana, you're safe now." She flinched slightly before meeting his gaze. Her eyes were swimming with tears. "Safe?" she whispered. "Ji-woon, I saw men die. I saw blood everywhere. I heard their screams. This isn't safety. This is war." The words pierced him deeper than any bullet. He had promised her protection, but all she had seen was the monster he had tried to keep hidden. The next morning, Seoul was buzzing with rumors. The police pretended not to see. Newspapers hinted at an underground clash, and Ji-woon's rivals fell silent. But none of that mattered to Eliana. She went to church, alone. The little chapel smelled of candles and old wood, a sharp contrast to the metallic scent of gunpowder still haunting her memory. Pastor Choi welcomed her with warm eyes, but when he noticed the bruises, his face hardened. "My child," he said softly. "What are you doing walking with that man?" Eliana's lips trembled. "He saved me, Pastor. He nearly died for me." "Of course he did," the pastor replied sternly. "That is what sin does. It drags you into the pit, then pretends to be your savior. Ji-woon is not your protector. He is the reason your life is in danger." Eliana's eyes burned with tears. "But he's different with me. He's gentle, Pastor. He's trying." Pastor Choi shook his head. "Love built on blood cannot stand. You must let him go, or you will be buried beside his enemies." The words sliced through her heart. That evening, Ji-woon appeared at the church steps. He looked out of place in his expensive black suit, his side still wrapped in blood-stained bandages. Children ran past him, whispering and staring. Mothers pulled their little ones away, fearful of the Mafia king standing at the holy door. But Eliana walked out anyway, her Bible clutched to her chest. "Why are you here?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Ji-woon's throat tightened. "To see you, to beg you not to listen to them. I'll leave it all, Eliana. The guns, the blood, the throne they think I want. None of it matters if I lose you." Her heart pounded. She had dreamed of hearing those words, but now that they were here, they felt impossible. "You can't just walk away, Ji-woon. That world doesn't let men leave. You know it." He stepped closer, his voice low, desperate. "Then let it kill me. I'd rather die trying to build a life with you than rule forever without you." Tears spilled down Eliana's cheeks. She wanted to throw herself into his arms, to believe his promises, to forget the smell of blood and fire. But Pastor Choi's voice echoed in her mind. "Love built on blood cannot stand." That night, she sat by her window, staring at the city lights. Her hymnal lay open in her lap, but her lips couldn't form the words. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ji-woon bleeding in the warehouse, gun in hand, eyes burning with love. She pressed her forehead to the glass, whispering, "God, what do I do? I love him, but am I walking into darkness?" Her tears slid down silently. In another part of the city, Ji-woon sat in his penthouse, staring at the empty space where Eliana's laughter used to be. For the first time in years, he felt truly powerless. The Ice King, who once ruled with fire and blood, was now held captive by a single prayer from a church girl. The city was restless that night. Rumors spread like wildfire. Park Dae-hyun's allies had regrouped, seeking revenge for his death. The Mafia world whispered of a final storm brewing, one that would either crown Ji-woon forever or bury him. In the quiet of her room, Eliana prayed harder than ever before. But this time, her prayer was not only for herself. It was for Ji-woon, for his soul, for his safety, for a miracle. Meanwhile, in the penthouse, Ji-woon sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the gun in his hands. His empire was crumbling. Rivals were circling like wolves. His men were doubting him, and the woman he loved was slipping away because of the life he lived. Sumin entered quietly, carrying 2 glasses of whiskey. His face was pale, eyes heavy with something unspoken. "You should let her go, Hyung," he said softly. "She doesn't belong in our world." Ji-woon's jaw tightened. She is my world. Sumin sighed, staring into his glass. Then you have to choose, her or this. The storm came faster than either expected. By midnight, the penthouse was under siege. Bullets shattered windows, grenades shook the marble floors, and Ji-woon's men fought desperately to hold the line. In the chaos, Ji-woon's enemies burst through the main hall. Leading them was a familiar figure, a lieutenant loyal to Daehyun, his face twisted with vengeance. Your time is over, Ice King, he spat. Ji-woon fired back, cutting men down one by one, but the enemy kept pouring in. Sumin fought beside him, fierce and relentless, but the numbers were overwhelming. Then it happened. A gun was aimed at Ji-woon from the shadows. The shot rang out, but Ji-woon didn't fall. Sumin had thrown himself in the way, the bullet tearing into his chest. He staggered, blood blooming across his shirt, before collapsing into Ji-woon's arms. No! Ji-woon roared, catching him. Sumin's breathing was shallow, his lips trembling with blood. Hyung, I betrayed you once, but tonight, I repay it. Ji-woon's hands shook as he pressed against the wound. Don't you dare die on me, Sumin. You're my brother. A weak smile touched Sumin's lips. Then, promise me, leave this life. Don't let her cry anymore. His eyes flickered. Be happy for both of us. And with that, Sumin's head fell back, his hand slipping from Ji-woon's. Ji-woon's scream tore through the penthouse like thunder. The Ice King had lost his most loyal brother. Rage swallowed him whole. Ji-woon rose, guns blazing, cutting down every man who dared breathe in his home. His fury was unstoppable, his grief turning him into a monster. By the time the smoke cleared, the enemies were dead or fleeing. The penthouse was in ruins, and Ji-woon stood alone among the corpses, his chest heaving, his eyes red with fire and tears. At dawn, Eliana arrived at the broken mansion. She gasped at the destruction. Bullet holes in the walls, blood on the marble floors, smoke still rising. She found him in the chapel room, where Sumin's body lay covered. Ji-woon was kneeling before the cross, his blood-stained hands pressed together, tears streaming silently down his face. Eliana, he whispered when she entered. His voice was broken. I don't want this anymore. I don't want the throne, the blood, the fear. I just want you. Her own tears fell as she knelt beside him, taking his trembling hands in hers despite the blood. Ji-woon, are you really ready to leave it all? His eyes met hers, burning with desperation. I'll burn every crown, abandon every empire. I'll fight every enemy. Just don't walk away from me. Eliana cupped his face gently, her thumb brushing his tear-stained cheek. Then don't fight alone anymore. Let God fight with you. Let love be your weapon, not your rage. Ji-woon's lips trembled. He had never felt so small, so weak, so in need of something greater. But in her eyes, he saw it, the light, the hope, the future he thought was impossible. He pressed his forehead to hers, whispering, I don't want to be a king. I just want to be yours. And for the first time, Eliana smiled through her tears. Then you already are. The sun rose over Seoul, golden light spilling into the broken mansion. Among the ashes of war, two souls held each other, fragile, wounded, but unshaken in love. The Ice King had made his final choice, and for the first time in his life, it wasn't fire or blood that defined him. It was love.
Hello besties, thank you so much for watching. The story isn't over yet. Part 3 is coming. Kindly like, subscribe and share. I hope you are enjoying.